everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me one quick favor, see that little black subscribe button on the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Really does help this channel grow, my audience grow, and I appreciate it more than you know. Also, quick thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet $50 on any game. Get up to $1,111 in free bets courtesy of the Betfred Sportsbook. Thank you again. Now, here's the video that you came here for. So obviously Monday kicked off SEC Media Days. We all know what SEC Media Days is about. You know, talking season, all 14 teams in one place. This year it's Nashville. Really, Monday's opener, a little bit quieter than years past. LSU, Texas A&M, Missouri took the podium. I guess it was pseudo headline-ish that Jimbo Fisher refuses to acknowledge what role Bobby Petrino will play in the offense this year. Now, I tend to think, look, listen, bottom line is I don't think Bobby Petrino comes to Texas A&M if he was not going to be the primary guy calling the plays, all that good stuff. Missouri, I don't think anything interesting came out of the Missouri press conferences. And LSU, really, Brian Kelly, his media availability was pretty quiet. He talked a little bit about the accent, a little bit about year one. He believes that he has a talented roster. We all do. I did think there was one pretty interesting quote, though, that did come out of day one of SEC Media Days. And it actually came from a little bit of an unexpected place. That is LSU star running back Josh Williams. Josh Williams, fourth-year player in the SEC. Last year, he was LSU's second leading rusher behind only Jaden Daniels. But Josh Williams is also from the city of Houston. And so when he was on the podium, you know, obviously we have the head coaches, then we have the breakout room with the players. Josh Williams, a Houston native who spent the last 3 years in the SEC, was asked if he had a message for Oklahoma and Texas, who are, of course, joining the SEC next year. Josh Williams did not hide his thoughts on what is coming to them when they join the SEC a year from now. Here is what Josh Williams, LSU running back, had to say on Oklahoma and Texas. He said, "I don't think they know what they're getting into. The SEC is a beast, everybody knows, but I'm excited for them to actually get into the conference." But again, he said point blank, end of story, "I don't think they know what they're getting into." To which I say, listen, I don't think Josh Williams intended to make a headline, and maybe it isn't even a headline. But I love the transparency. I love the honesty, and I agree 100%. As excited as I am about this upcoming season, I think it's going to be a great year in college football. I'm also excited for next year when Texas and Oklahoma officially come into this league, officially come into this gauntlet. But I got to back up what Josh Williams has to say, because I do not think that Texas and Oklahoma actually know what they're getting into. And it's interesting, right? I mean, Josh Williams used the right word. He said, the SEC is a beast. And listen, you don't need me to tell you. You don't need Josh Williams to tell you. But that's the biggest difference between the SEC and every other conference in college football. I actually think the Big 12 is probably better than it's been given credit for through the years. But you go to the SEC, it is just a different level of commitment across the board. Coaching, facilities, assistant coaches, support staff, resources, finances, NIL. You go on and on and on down the list. The SEC is second to none across the board. And it's not just a team or two like in most conferences. You go to the ACC. We know that Clemson and Florida State, maybe Miami, are basically playing a different game other than everybody else. Same with Ohio State and Michigan, maybe Penn State in the Big Ten. Same with USC and Oregon, at least for this year in the Pac-12. In the SEC, it's just across the board. Everybody's freaking good. Everybody's freaking committed, and everybody is ready to rip your head off every single year. You go back and look at when that SEC schedule was released a few weeks ago for the 2024 season. My biggest takeaway was watching Oklahoma and Texas people react to their first schedules. Oh my goodness. I saw a bunch of people that cover those teams say, oh my goodness, the schedule, we got a brutal first year in the SEC. No, you didn't. You just got what is an SEC schedule. In the SEC, every game's a gauntlet, every game's a bear, and even the teams that aren't quote unquote elite, they'll beat you if you're not ready. Ole Miss will beat your brains in and make you look bad if you're not ready. Kentucky and Mark Stoops have consistently won 8, 9, 10 games over the last half decade. You know, Sam Pittman in Arkansas, tough physical team. They'll beat you up if you don't come in ready to play. Ask Texas a few years ago. You go on and on down the list. South Carolina beat Clemson last year. Everybody is a bear in this league, and it's across the board. Again, I looked it up just for fun. You know that since the last time the Big 12 won a national championship, first of all, do you know the last time the Big 12 won a national championship? It's going to take a second. Take a deep breath. You know what the answer was? 2005 with Texas and Vince Young. Since then, the SEC, if you want to know how dominant they've been over the last 2 decades in college football, of the last 17 national championships, 13 were won by the SEC. The only 4 that weren't: Florida State, Clemson has done it twice, and Ohio State obviously did it once under Urban Meyer. And so I bring it up because every year the SEC is competitive. And here's the wild part. Of those, what is it, 13 national championships I said, they've been won by 5 different schools. Bama's won a bunch. LSU's won 2 during that time under 2 different head coaches. Florida won 2 under Urban Meyer. Auburn won 1. I think I'm missing somebody else that I did not say. Georgia. Oh, of course. Georgia won 2 during that stretch as well. So again, 5 different teams in 15 years have won national championships out of this league. That is incredible. And to me, I'll say this, listen, I get the economics of college football, and I get that you're either going ahead or falling behind. And I'm never going to criticize a school for taking more money. I've talked about it on this show. My own alma mater, UConn, is considering being one of the replacements eventually for Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12. So I can't sit here and criticize the school for taking money. But I remember the day that Texas and Oklahoma, that first report came out at SEC Media Days. And I said, they're crazy if they want to leave. I get the money part. But at the same time, they have a perfect pathway in the Big 12 right now. And again, it goes to what I just said. As opposed to the SEC, where Auburn can beat you, where Ole Miss can beat you, where Georgia, obviously, Florida, Tennessee, whoever you catch in that given year, Bama, LSU. I thought Oklahoma and Texas were uniquely built where if they're rolling, they're by far the best team in the conference. Remember, when it was announced that Oklahoma and Texas were going to the SEC, Oklahoma was coming off 6 straight conference championships. During that stretch, they made the playoff 4 times. Now, I know you could criticize them for not winning once they get there, but the bottom line is the pathway was there. If Oklahoma had semi-competent coaching, and I think Lincoln Riley is much more than semi-competent, but the point is, if Oklahoma has semi-competent coaching, they got more resources, facilities, everything than everybody else in this league. Certainly the same with Texas. And so as I look ahead to this next chapter and this next generation, I don't think they know what they're getting into. And I'm curious to see how they land on their feet next year when they enter. Texas, listen, we talked about Texas a few weeks ago. If you're a Texas fan and you want to be excited about this season, I'm not going to criticize you. We're all fans of somebody. You're allowed to be excited about a season in which you picked to win the Big 12. I'll say this, though. If you don't win it, don't you got to be kind of a little bit worried going into the SEC next year? Now, I get it. There's scenarios, you can finish 11-1. Somebody else could finish 11-1. You don't win it. I get it. But the point I'm trying to make is if you don't reach expectations this year, got to think it might never happen under Steve Sarkisian. And this is what I go back to with Sark. I think he's a great play caller. I think his story is incredible, what he has overcome in his personal life. But on the field, between the white lines, have we all watched Sark? We all understand that on the field, between the white lines, this is a guy that has never won more than 8 games in a regular season in his career. This is going to be his 9th year as a head coach. And it's not like he was at, nowhere state before this. He's at Texas, USC, and Washington. And he's never won more than 8 games in the regular season, never won more than 9 games if you include the postseason. This kind of a year, Sark's got to do it. If he doesn't do it, I think there's reason for concern heading into the SEC next year. And Oklahoma, it goes without saying, there is no doubt you better turn this ship in year 2 under Brent Venables, because year 1 was a train wreck. You go back to last year, I was critical of Brent Venables. I said, look, never going to happen, but I don't even want to say it. I thought that they needed to have some tough conversation with Brent Venables last year. It seems like the administration has his back, but they had the 2nd worst defense in the SEC, in the Big 12 last year. They gave up 40 or more points 6 times last year, and Brent Venables is supposed to be a defensive guru. 40 or more points 6 times. For what it's worth, Lincoln Riley's last year at Oklahoma, 4th ranked defense in the Big 12. Brent Venables' first year in the Big 12, 9th ranked defense in the Big 12. So I get it. He's now got 2 full recruiting classes that he's brought in. Last year's class was a top 5 class. They killed it in the portal. They better turn this thing quick, because that's another program. You don't win 8, 9, 10 games going out of the Big 12. it'd be cause for concern next year. So it's an interesting conversation. And I'll say this, credit Josh Williams from LSU, not afraid to say exactly what is on his mind in terms of this conversation. Fascinating conversation. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. Also, make sure to download full episodes of the Aaron Torres Pod anywhere you get your podcasts.